Hello again and welcome to the Podium Pod, the podcast covering the 2023 FIBA World Cup across Indonesia, Japan and the Philippines. Brought to you by the Pick and Roll. Head to pickandroll.com.au and subscribe for in-depth commentary and analysis on Aussie hoops. This is the first of our group previews ahead of the 2023 FIBA World Cup. We will be covering Group A and Group B. Joining me is my Clutch Radio broadcast partner, Jacob Dool. Jacob, we've done a little bit of research on some basketball nations that are a little bit lower ranked than we would usually probably look at, but there's some deep cuts over the next 20 minutes or so.
There is, and a surprising number of familiar names in some of these countries that maybe you don't realize have one or two NBA or former NBA players. So I think that speaks to the depth of this tournament and might be some fun surprises coming up when things kick off.
So we'll go through the groups in order. We'll have 4 episodes for you covering 2 groups each. I'm going to go through the teams as they are ranked with FIBA right now. So we'll start with the highest ranked team and move to the lowest ranked team in each group. That's how it'll work. We start with Group A, and Italy are the highest ranked team in the group. They're currently ranked 10th. The last World Cup, they were second in Group D, so they're able to get through to the next phase of the World Cup, probably in the box seat for this particular group. We'll get to the other teams in a moment. For the Italians, Jacob, they always tend to be rather competitive in a lot of these circumstances. I remember they had a really good Olympics as well and made some teams very, very nervous there.
They did, and that competitiveness kind of showed in the qualifying for this World Cup as well. They booked their ticket with a whole window to spare in the whole process, so no real question marks there. And they always do just seem to have that cohesion and that familiarity that a lot of these European teams have that helps them out on the world stage.
And some familiar names in the squad. Luigi Datomi is one of those, along with Nico Melli. So some players that we would have seen on benches in the NBA that can add that professionalism. But as you say, I think the strength of the Italian team is their togetherness, and they would have been playing together over the last probably 10 or 15 years for a lot of these guys, right through youth basketball, right through to FIBA men's play, and that's probably a hallmark of a lot of the big European programs.
Yeah, and what Italy have quite often had is they've got that in their depth. They have that cohesion, and then they've got a bit of star power at the top to power them through. So, as you say, Nico Melli spent a lot of time in the NBA. Simone Fontecchio last year in Utah as a 27-year-old rookie. He was their best player fairly comfortably through the qualifying as well. So even with another former NBA guard, Nico Mannion, not playing in this tournament, they do still have that sort of top-level talent that could maybe lift them above others in this group.
I think it's probably going to be a fairly fruitful Group A for this Italy team. We'll come to our preview and our predictions in just a moment. We'll cover the second team in this group, ranked 23rd in the world. The Dominican Republic have had a few outs over the last few days announced that were pretty key to whether they were going to be very competitive or just competitive in this tournament. We'll talk about those outs in a moment. They were second in Group G at the last World Cup, so they also got through to the next phase in 2019. Their star player, now their only star player seemingly, is Karl Anthony Towns. Jacob, how much load is going to be on Karl Anthony Towns in this tournament?
It's going to be a lot, isn't it? He really is going to have to be the focal point for this team. Not to say that there isn't other talent there. They basically single-handedly took Argentina out of qualifying without Karl Anthony Towns present, but taking this next step at a World Cup, he is the kind of player that could really vault them into beyond the group stage, maybe even a bit further if he can really start rolling.
And they're missing 2 very key players, one veteran and one, younger talent. Al Horford being the veteran of probably about 15 years at this point, nearly 20 in the NBA, and Chris Duarte, who's spent a couple of seasons in Indiana and just got traded to Sacramento over the last couple of months. So between those 2 guys, there's a lot of talent there missing from this Dominican side, but you can't really count them out. They're clearly a strong basketballing nation and should be in the box seat for the second position in this group.
You'd have to think so, and Horford and Duarte would have almost made that a certainty with sort of the extra dimension they would have brought, but I do still think that there's going to be enough talent here to get through. guys like Angel Delgado spent time in the NBA as well, brings a bit of experience. Victor Liz led them in scoring and qualifying. I think they'll have enough around towns that he isn't having to do absolutely everything to get them through this group.
Well, we move to the Philippines, one of the host nations in this tournament. You'll be heading to Manila for the latter stages of the tournament, so exciting times for you, Jacob. But for this Philippines side, we know how passionate this nation is about basketball. The Philippines and Australia had a very famous on-court altercation a few years ago, which left a lot of salt in the mouths of both nations for a little while. Hopefully that's just about healed at this point, particularly with Kai Sotto having great success in the NBL the last couple of seasons and being rather popular among local and international fans. But for the Philippines, they're ranked 40th. They were last in Group D last time around. And for me, I think the strength of playing in front of their home crowd, as well as the presence for former Sixth Man of the Year, Jordan Clarkson, would have them eyeing second spot in this group behind Italy. And they are definitely a huge challenge to the Dominican Republic in trying to capture that second position and advance in this World Cup.
As you say, the home crowd's going to play a massive part in this, and they are such a passionate basketball country, and they're going to want to get back a little bit of pride after, as you mentioned, finishing dead last at the last World Cup, missing out on the Olympics. They would want to show that they belong on the world stage, and with someone like Jordan Clarkson leading the way, he is the kind of dynamic player on the perimeter that can just catch fire and carry a team on his shoulders. So there are a lot of pieces there that could maybe see them challenge getting out of this group.
Clarkson's capable of scoring 40 in a FIBA game with the way that he plays. I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see him unleashed as the primary option on a team. And for Kai Sotto, he's had a lot of development. He showed some flashes in Summer League this past season, now has left the NBL, but will be eyeing off a eventual stint, at least in the G League, if not in the NBA. And, you know, he's got a lot of talent and a lot of potential that he showed in his couple of years at Adelaide.
This is a really good opportunity for Soto as an audition to go to that next level, because you will see as we keep on going through these previews, in the coming days, but there are a lot of talented bigs at this World Cup, and he's going to have to be that guy for the Philippines who's not only, taking on those bigs offensively, but trying to slow them down at the other end too. So it's a big challenge, and if he can do that well, it'll help the Philippines and it'll help him moving forward.
Well, the last team in Group A is Angola. They're ranked just one spot below the Philippines in 41st place. They finished third in Group N at the last World Cup, so missed out on that second round berth. They're looking at Bruno Fernando as their major contributor, Jacob, a power forward that plays for the Atlanta Hawks. So for Angola, what's the key to them being able to try and make some noise in this tournament?
Yeah, I think it is going to be those, as we were just saying about the Philippines, those big men who are going to be really key. Bruno Fernando, a lot of talent. He only played in one qualifying window and struggled a bit with foul trouble, which can be the case in FIBA basketball. But if he can stay on the floor, he will have to be the leader for this team. And looking back a few years, Australians know how much damage Yannick Moreira can do if he ends up finding his way onto this roster. Had 38 points and 15 rebounds at the 2014 World Cup when they knocked over the Boomers. So Angola might come in maybe as the least favoured of the teams in this group, but I think there's plenty of proof there that they could definitely make a little bit of noise.
So looking at Group A on the whole, who are your two teams progressing through to the next phase of the World Cup when the round robin is all said and done?
I think in a group like this, that top level talent is going to be what's going to split the difference. So I think Italy and the Dominican Republic, they have those players that can just get the job done, take care of business, and move them along to the next round.
For me, I'm also picking Italy, but I'm going to pick an upset. I'm going to go with the home team. I think the Philippines crowd, as well as their two key players, are fully capable of getting over the Dominican Republic. Karl Anthony Towns hasn't really shown a propensity to be, a go-to winning player over his NBA career. So this is a big test for him. And I think going into such a hostile environment, playing against the Philippines with a guy like Jordan Clarkson, who is afraid of nobody, and Kai Sotto, who is 7 foot tall, but will feel about 9 foot tall in that arena, they'll be hard to go past. So it's a little bit of a homer pick and a little bit of a romantic pick, but I want to see the Philippines progress through in Group A. We'll move on to Group B, and they're headlined by another team that's missing quite a bit of talent, Serbia. They're ranked 6th, and they topped Group D in the last World Cup. They made it to the 5-6 classification game, so just one short of the semi-final games with Serbia. They were silver medalists at Eurobasket 2017, but they only managed the round of 16 in 2022. So they've been dropping off a little bit. And Jacob, they've suffered some significant losses of personnel over the last couple of months that have been announced.
Have no real surprises that Nikola Jokic won't be playing at the World Cup after a long run in the NBA title run, obviously, with the Denver Nuggets. He'll be resting up at home with his feet up, maybe heading to the horse races every now and then and cashing some checks there. But Alexei Pokusevski also out, which he, in the FIBA environment, could have been a really interesting player to watch. But you look down their preliminary roster, still a lot of talent there. Bogdan Bogdanovic, a lot of NBA experience by now. Nikola Jovic, another sort of high-level prospect to come out of the country, and a few other guys who have NBA experience as well. So they're a little bit thinner than maybe they would have liked to be, but still plenty to like there.
Yeah, Jovic is also in some really strong trade rumors as well, being a member of the Miami Heat and with Miami being linked to Damian Lillard. So there's a little bit of business going around in the background for Nikola Jovic. Potentially, I'd also like to see the Serbian team just change that V to a K and scare opposition teams on the score sheet prior to games, just to mess with them. The next team in Group B, ranked 20th in the world, they were last in Group J at the last World Cup, is Puerto Rico. They're notable players, Tremont Waters and Ismael Romero. Tremont Waters has had a cup of coffee in the NBA with a couple of teams, including Toronto and Washington, as well as playing for Victor Wembanyama's team, Metropolitans 92. More recently, and Ismael Romero as well was undrafted, had a cup of coffee in the G League, and then has been bouncing around Puerto Rico and Europe. So some experience here, and Puerto Rico, just like we just spoke about the Dominican Republic, very strong always at these sorts of competitions and give it their all.
Yeah, and they had a really good qualifying competition in their group in the Americas. Only finished behind the USA, ended up ahead of Mexico, ahead of Brazil. So some really good basketball countries, and you'd have to think they'd be bringing some confidence into the World Cup after that. Obviously, qualifying, you're not getting every team at full strength, but still nice to have some momentum coming in.
So they are the second highest ranked team in this group. So they'd be going in hoping and expecting to make the second round. But they've got a couple of teams on their tail that I think are fully capable of making the second round as well. The first one is China. They're ranked 27th in the world. They were second in Group M at the last World Cup and went through to the second round. They currently have Zhou Qi, who was in the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix for the last couple of years in the NBL. And CBA MVP Jinhui Hu, who is a 6'11 center who averaged 20 and 11 in the CBA last season and won their domestic MVP, and recently naturalized an NBA player as well, Jacob.
Yeah, Kyle Anderson will be looking to make his debut for the Chinese national team ahead of the tournament, and that could be a really massive boost, couldn't it, for them? Because, as you say, their real strength has been on the interior. They always seem to have one or two fairly dominant bigs on their roster, but in Anderson, you get someone who can play a little bit more on the perimeter, take the opposition's best offensive player out there, create for others a little bit on the other end of the floor, and just pull things together for a team that has maybe been a little bit one-dimensional in the past.
Yeah, the creation is going to be the big thing with Kyle Anderson. He's going to be asked to create more than he just about has before, except in his very, very early days with the San Antonio Spurs, where he was kind of a point forward. But should be a very interesting tournament for China, and they would have very clear aspirations to make it to the second round. Speaking of romantic picks, I think a lot of Australian basketball fans would be thrilled to see South Sudan in this World Cup, particularly with them never participating in a World Cup previously, coached by Luol Deng, NBA veteran of Chicago, and an $80 million contract for Los Angeles that he barely suited up for. So go get that bag, Luol. That was brilliant. They made the 2021 AfroBasket quarters, and they're ranked 62nd in the world, but they do have some very notable and familiar players to Australian audiences, Jacob.
They do. There was a real swathe of NBL players that sort of cycled through their team throughout qualifying. Guys like Sunday Dech, Majuk Deng, Bull Kowal, Junior Madut, all really strong, really capable NBL players, went onto that national team and played really well and led them to a fairly dominant qualifying campaign. They only lost one game and they were 3 wins clear of the next side below them. So that world ranking might say one thing, but I think their recent form says they're a lot better than that might suggest.
I think this is the first of a few groups of death that we'll cover, not necessarily for first place, but for second place. I think Serbia is far and away the most talented and most capable team in this group, but you could make a very clear case for any of the other 3 teams to get that second spot.
You could, and they're all sort of very different teams, so it's kind of hard to pick which style might pan out the best on any given day. But there's going to be some seriously entertaining games of basketball, I think, as they look to take that second spot.
So, money where your mouth is, Group B, who's making it?
You made the romantic pick on the Philippines.
Yes,
I think
I
I'll
like
take
it.
one this time around. I'll take South Sudan. You just want it to happen, don't you? I feel like there's going to be such a wave of emotion, of energy behind the whole team that hopefully that can just sort of carry them over the top and get them into the second round.
I love it. I wish I was as confident as you were. I'm going to go slightly differently. I think Serbia will make it. And I think China will sneak through as well. I think with the addition of Carl Anderson, the size that they will pit up against Puerto Rico and South Sudan, I think will be really, really hard for those teams to overcome, and they'll make it in the second round. They may not go too much farther than that, but Serbia and China for me. But I would love nothing more than to see South Sudan make it through to the next round. I will be cheering them and very biased for them throughout this tournament. Jacob, thank you for joining me for Group A and Group B. We'll see you again for yet another preview coming up here on the Podium Pod, the podcast covering the 2023 FIBA World Cup, brought to you by thepickandroll.com.au. Head to pickandroll.com.au and subscribe for in-depth commentary and analysis on Aussie hoops. We'll see you again next time.